Okay, hello everybody. You're going to see me come up on screen in just a second here. All right. Hi everybody, my name is Katie Blackman. I am the Senior Director of Community Conservation for Potomac Conservancy. I just want to let everybody know that this session tonight is being automatically recorded. So I just want to let everybody know that before we get started. We are very excited to be hosting our first ever virtual Ask an Expert happy hour event. If you haven't gotten a chance yet, please tell us in the chat what your name is, where you're logging in from tonight, and if you're enjoying a local beverage, what are you drinking? I have good old Potomac River tap water, which I've told directly in front of me, so it's not actually a part of my river here. And please enjoy my background here is from a shot of Keybridge Boathouse, one of our favorite places to paddle. We were very sad this year that we couldn't get together for our summer happy hour paddle events. It's one of our favorite events of the year. So we were sad we didn't get to do that with you all, but we're really, really excited tonight for this alternative to our alternative happy hours. And it looks like we've got kind of an intimate group right now, so please come with your questions. We have great opportunity for conversation, and hopefully some more folks will join us as the evening goes on. I want to get started by introducing our amazing guest speakers today. We are very, very lucky. Actually, sorry, before I'm getting ahead of myself, I'm just so excited. Before we do that, I want to tell you guys what you can expect tonight. That's probably an important place to start. So here's the plan. I'm going to introduce our speakers in just a second. We are going to have time where I've got a bunch of questions for Ashley and Risa. So we're going to have time to chat with them. You'll get to hear some of our conversation. And then it's going to be your turn. So we're going to turn over the question asking to you. So if you are feeling like you want to come up on screen and ask questions in person, you can absolutely do that. If you would prefer to use the chat feature, you can do that as well, and I'll ask your questions out loud. Please feel free to use the chat throughout the event this evening, but just remember to keep it clean. If you want to ask a question to our speakers when it is our Q&A time, you can use the raise your hand feature. For those of you who don't know how to do that, I'm going to show you on the next slide here how you can do that. If you are called on, either Melissa, who is also a member of Team Potomac, or myself will unmute you. But other than that, try and keep, or please keep yourself muted, except for you, Ashley and Risa. We want to hear your voices here tonight. And if you have a question or you need something, you can put it in the chat, and we have staff monitoring the chat tonight, and they can help with that. So with that, I'm going to introduce our speakers for this evening. Oh, no, before we do that, I'm sorry, I'm all off track here. Just a real quick Zoom tip if you haven't done this before. If you have your Zoom full screen, you won't be able to necessarily see all of the options, but if you just expand it to fit the width of your screen, you'll have all these options at the bottom of your screen. So if to get to the raise hand feature, you can click on this participants button. And then you can also click on the chat. So you can have both of those open at the same time to see what's in the chat and to be able to use the raise your hand feature. The raise your hand feature can be found right here. And once you do that, when you've successfully raised your hand, you'll see next to your name a little hand. So please do feel free to use that feature when we get to the audience Q&A at the end of our event tonight. All right, now with that all out of the way here, I'm very pleased to introduce Ashley Nee. Ashley, if you want to wave to the people, they can kind of see you off in the corner there. Ashley is a Maryland native. And she's trained on the Potomac since she was 10 years old, and that led her to a career of competing in paddling events all around the world. She competed in the 2016 Olympic Games in Rio de Janeiro, and she won the overall World Cup title in Extreme K1 in 2019. Congratulations. Ashley's next adventure marries her passion for paddling and teaching kids. She's going to be working for Potomac Paddle Sports, or may have already started that, and is starting a junior Olympic program. So Ashley, thank you so much for being here tonight. We're really excited to have you. And our second expert is Risa Shimoda. Risa is a world-class paddler, entrepreneur, and river advocate. She has served twice as the executive director of American Whitewater and increased the membership of that advocacy organization from around 30 members to thousands of members today. Risa was called one of the most influential boaters of all time by Paddling Magazine, and was the first woman to descend the Green River Narrows and the second woman to run the North Fork, Payette and Niagara Gorge. She's also represented the U.S. in 6 freestyle world champions. She now lends her talents to the River Management Society as the executive director, and has transformed the organization in a program designed by and for federal and state staff agency into one that provides products and services for private industry, educators, river trails, watershed professionals, and the stakeholders that they serve. So she's really expanded the scope of that organization as well. So Risa, thank you so much for being with us tonight. I am going to now stop sharing my screen, so you'll see Risa and Ashley and I up on the screen with you all. So give me 1 second here, and we'll make this a little bit. There we go. If you all want to, you can keep it on gallery view, but you'll have a lot of black squares that way. The other option is to click on that speaker view right there, and whoever is speaking at the time will show up prominently on your screen. That might be a more enjoyable way for you to use the Zoom this evening. Okay, so I'm going to get started with some questions. And Risa, my first question is for you. So Risa, what drew you to paddling, and why whitewater, why freestyle? Tell us more about your paddle journey.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for hosting us, Katie. And it's great to see you, Ashley. I started not when I was really little, out of college, and up until I started my job, I had been really involved in other activities, mainly dancing, every possible type of dancing. And I went cold turkey on that. And when I started my first job, there was a man that worked in my cubicle, or next to my cubicle, who would talk about kayaking every day of the week. On Friday, he would talk about where he was going, and on Monday, he would talk about where he came from. And he always had a kayak in his car. And I didn't know anybody in my town. It was in Cincinnati, Ohio. And he brought me around to all the activities that he was involved in. And one of them was a pool rolling session. And it was after he was a widower. It was after square dancing for singles, going to choir with him, going to Parents Without Partners meetings, and those were not very interesting to me. But we went to a pool rolling session, and afterwards, I thought the people were really interesting because they were all kind of individual professional people. The blue collar people were plumbers, electricians, car repair people. The white collar people were doctors, physical therapists, math teachers, physics teachers. There was this odd kind of profile, but it was intriguing to me, and as an engineer professionally. And after we went to the pool rolling session, I did not learn to roll, but we watched a movie. So this shows how old I am, but we watched Fast and Clean. And it's about people approaching the 1989 World Championships. And what was notable to me was that there was a gal named Becky Judd who started kayaking when she was like 22. And she made the team when she was like 26. So I thought, well, maybe if she can do that, I can do that. So the combination of the profile of the people, besides that they were all really nice, the fact that they seemed like they didn't care that much about what other people thought about them. They pursued this sport on their own. And then, aspirationally seeing someone who could do really well as a competitor who didn't start when they were really little, so there was a chance for me. That's how I got started.
Yeah, thank you. Ashley, similar question. What drew you to paddling, and what's so special about the Potomac and paddling on the Potomac?
Yeah, so I got a, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear
Okay,
you.
cool. Yeah, so I got a little bit of a different start. I was 10 when I moved over from the canoeing side of the lake at Valley Mill Camp to the kayaking side, reluctantly. I had no interest in kayaking, but my friend dragged me over there and forced the instructor halfway through the period to teach me how to wet exit.
Olympic Kayakers.
And it was awesome. Very quickly after that, I started training with my coach that I trained with for 7 years. And it really was this friend group that just developed into a team. And then it developed into, okay, we're going to Europe and we're racing junior nationals. And then all of a sudden we made the national team. And I still paddle with those same people to this day. Like if I am going to run scary things in class 5, like I'm going to go back to those people I met back at the lake. Um, and I think that kind of community is really what maybe didn't draw me in the initial forcing me to wet exit, but pretty quickly it became why I stayed. And yeah.
I think that's really interesting that both of you, we think of kayaking, you're in a boat by yourself, right? So it seems like this is a really individual thing that you do alone. But both of you mentioned the kind of the community, the friendship, the people that are there. That's something I know at Potomac Conservancy we've seen a lot with our happy hour paddles is it's just a way that people can get out and experience something new or different or challenging or easy or relaxing or whatever you want out of the experience, but you can do it together. And that's something that I found really valuable about boating too. So I think that's interesting that that was a piece of both of your answers there. Ashley, my next question is for you. What's the paddling community like in the DMV as compared to other parts of the country or the world?
Sure. Well, I've been to a lot of parts of the world. I can't say that I've necessarily been a part of their community because I've always come back home. 40 some countries, between every trip, I come back home. The community here, for me personally, is everything. There's so many people, such good intentions. Everybody waves at each other on the roads. You're a kayaker. You have a boat in your car. And everyone that shows up at Anglers or Sandy Beach or wherever on the Potomac River just goes out and enjoys each other and looks at, like, keeps an eye out for each other. I think that's a really big thing. There's no paddler on that river that wouldn't go help another paddler. So I think that's the best part.
Great. And Risa, you've also boated kind of all over the country and all over the world. Is there anything about the paddling community here that's special or stands out for you?
I don't think so. I think the people are of the same ilk, definitely. What's different is that there are so many. If WTOP said all kayakers go to Anglers Inn right now, there would be 2,000. There are so many from age 10 or less to age 90 who go out, who will be there next Saturday morning out on the river. So it's just, there's so many. But I think within that, there are little groups, people who went to the same first rowing class or people who grew up at the same camp. But I think the little pods are reflective of a much smaller group in, say, like Salt Lake City.
Mm-hmm.
The relationship between that group is the same. And I think, to Ashley's point, it's fun and it's exciting and it's, neat to learn things. But what's a little bit different than maybe some other sports is that when you're out with a group, you have each other's back. You have to. Because something could happen to you, not just to be like afraid and having somebody come save you, but you're just always with the group. And that's between that. And then if you ever do like any kind of road trip, I've been on many trips where I didn't notice the people in the car when I got in, and then 12 hours later, you're kind of friends. And then after you've camped, slept, gone to the bathroom, everything to get in this little pod, by the time the end of the weekend, you know each other well, you trust each other, and you've had each other's back in case you needed each other.
Sounds like it's a sport that you can that if you pick up, even if you were to move somewhere else, you could find that community, that it's a welcoming community no matter where you go. So that's really it sounds like it would be a great sport for a lot of people to pick up if they can. Risa, I want to stay with you for a second. So we talked about the kind of really good aspects of paddling community, but what do you think are some of the greatest issues that paddlers face in the Potomac watershed in particular? So I'm thinking, are there concerns about pollution, or there parts of the Potomac that are particularly tricky to paddle, and is access an issue? Are there any issues that paddlers face in the Potomac watershed?
That's a big question. Everyone faces the issue of water quality. Boaters have a unique perspective about it. I remember when one of the, since I've been here since 2001, and there have been 2 or 3 spills from Frederick coming down because something broke up there. So there's some billion gallons of wastewater coming down, and there were yellow tapes up for about a day, and then they would go down. And Washington Post goes out to anglers and asks Joe Paddler or Mary Paddler, so are you worried about paddling because of the spill yesterday? Nah, I'm gonna go paddling. And that's not the answer that they want to hear, right? Because I think that not that paddlers don't care about water quality, but we sort of live with it perhaps more than we should. I think as in terms of pursuing the sport, periodically there's an issue of access, and it usually is timed with a new person at the Park Service who thinks they're doing their job, and there's high water or something that seems dangerous, and they're trying to save paddlers from themselves, so they try to block it off.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's a big bunch of debris somewhere, or high water, and that what that doesn't do, it doesn't acknowledge that there are knowledgeable paddlers who know when to go, where to go, how to take care of themselves. Like, you don't have to tell Ashley to be careful on the water. You just kind of don't have to do that, because she knows either to stay off or to take care.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that not during periods where there are new people taking care, like regulatory people,
Mm-hmm.
then that's a threat to access.
Mm-hmm.
And then for the regular population, this year it's been unusual because there's been so many people like dying to get out of their house and running out to the river. So there've been an unusual number of rescues and fatalities, and I think we've all seen that on TV. But regularly in the springtime, when the weather gets nice, the sky is blue, the water isn't brown, like icky looking, and it's warm outside, the air temperature is warm, that's when people get in trouble, because the water seems okay, but it's still deep, cold, and it's dangerous down there. So the Park Service on both sides have spent a lot of energy trying to tell John Q. Public that they have to be careful, and it's just a very challenging situation. And then just one other thing that I don't think boaters think it's a challenge, but it's kind of a bummer, is that in Montgomery County, it's illegal to get on a river. It's illegal. It's illegal to get on Rock Creek, in Montgomery County, on West Branch, the northwest branch of the Anacostia. It's illegal. It's a law in the county. It's very unusual. It's one of the only ones in the country that's like that. And there's a group now working with Montgomery Parks to not have that be the case.
It's illegal to put in there, or
it's illegal. Yes, it's illegal to put in on a creek.
Okay.
It's illegal. I live on Sligo Creek. It's illegal for me to get on Sligo Creek if it's running.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
Yeah. So is that a threat to boaters? No. But is it
It's an issue of access?
It's an issue of access, right?
Yeah, because not everybody lives close enough to the Potomac to just get right there. Ashley, I see you nodding a lot. Do you have anything you want to add to?
I'm just enjoying listening to Risa so much. She's so knowledgeable, such a legend.
Yeah, it sounds like advocacy is something that's good for people to get involved in, to say, hey, we need access to the river, that this is an important place. We think of the Potomac as not just really important because it is the source of the water we drink, although it is, and because it's a really ecologically diverse river, so it's got a lot of environmental benefits to our communities, but also because it's a place that so many of us like to go and play. So yeah, access to the river is something that we at Potomac Conservancy think is really important. To kind of stay on the challenges, Risa, recently we've seen the murder of Ahmaud Arbery and the harassment of Christian Cooper this spring. And these point to deeply tragic examples of the outdoors and outdoor recreation not being safe spaces for everyone. So in your opinion, what is or what should be done by the paddling community to make this sport in particular a more inclusive and safe space for all members of our community?
You know, that's kind of a hard question because the paddling community here is similar to the paddling community all over the country. If you said, okay, all Black people who are kayakers, avid enthusiasts, stand up, you'd be waiting for a long time. There are probably only a dozen in the whole country. That's really awful. I mean, if there's a couple million paddlers, but it's a reflection of many systemic things. Access, learning to swim, having your parents endorse it as a fun sport, having your parents view it as something that's worth your time, worth learning, and better than either going to Saturday morning class or doing the laundry for the family or, doing another kind of team sport. So, to tackle all of that, you asked me, you mentioned you were going to ask me this, and the only thing that I can think of, I'll share something I'm doing at work, and this is with the River Management Society, where our members are kind of half river advocates type people, and then half state and federal agency people. And we had a meeting, like a Zoom type meeting last week, and this gal from the Park Service, the River Trails Conservation Assistance Program. So there's like 150 of them around the country that work on all sorts of river projects, not just Park Service land. But so she showed me a group picture of a training that they did last year at the training center in Shepherdstown. Mm-hmm. So there are 150 people, 2 Black people, 2 other people of color, some sort of color. It's ridiculous. But those are the leaders of the Park Service, and they're trying to be inclusive. And then she said, now, if you look at the people that we serve on the Potomac, at the Liberty Bell, on the Niobrara, all these places, it's like 50% people of color. People who go downtown to the mall, and anyone who walks in the mall. So they're having a hard time coming to terms with it, and you can't change it immediately. But a fellow who joined our conversation, who was pretty awesome, he was the he's like a pretty high name, Deputy Director of Virginia Department of Conservation and Recreation. Mm-hmm. He grew up in Richmond, James County Park System. So he's been in the system for 10 or 15 years. He's Black, and his department is looking at every job, every hiring practice, every mentoring training, guide, every criteria for promotion, everything about how they bring people into hire them in and bring them up through their system. They're looking at the documents and the practices through a diversity lens, mm-hmm. saying, is this okay? Is there a qualification that someone is aware or involved with or cares about issues of diversity? Maybe there should be in the job application, just super basic things. But what they're doing is looking at their picture saying, this sucks. We're way too white. We're way too male. And then you say, how do you fix it? You can't fix it immediately. So looking at the system. So there, if there's some advice, there they have someone who understands what the issue is, and he doesn't hate other people. He wants to fix it. He also doesn't want people to worry when they pass him on a trail, mm-hmm. or when he kayaks by. They don't want to look at them and see that they're worried. Mm-hmm. And so he is in a position to tackle it at a systemic level. So since not everybody's able to do that, not all of us are in that kind of position, he had this great, like a mantra sort of, listen, learn, act, and repeat. So you may not be able to change something big in your work group, your organization, the community that you serve, or the person in the mirror right away. So he said, just listen to a podcast. Or when someone who you don't like, maybe because they're XYZ or because they're unfamiliar, just listen to them and do it again. And then try something, catch somebody in the act of kindness kind of thing. Think about what you could do, and if you say, well, that's not comfortable for me, try it. Unless it's going to make you bleed, unless it's going to hurt you or something. And then try it, because it's sort of like stretching a muscle. When Ashley hasn't been paddling for a week and then she paddles really hard that day, it's just like that. It has to feel a little bit uncomfortable. If it doesn't hurt you, then it's worth trying again. And the hard
Lean
part,
into that discomfort,
into a little bit of discomfort level, because you have to do that before you're going to change the world. You have to get used to being uncomfortable. I think the hard part is figuring out what that is. And so you listen to 5 podcasts. Okay, now what do I do? I'm just me. I just working whatever. So I would just say reach out and try to think of something, and then ask a friend or ask a colleague. So that's like what I'm doing. We just hired somebody, so I asked our group. We already had the people applied, and we narrowed it down to the finalists, and we're like, man, we should have asked them that other question, or we should have scoped it out differently or something. So we just had second interviews, and we asked them a few hard questions that what you just asked me. And the person who got the job had the best answer. So it was a little teeny tiny bit that we did with this person. But we ended up hiring somebody that had that little edge, a little bit more sensibility than the other person who was qualified. So there's no one answer.
Yeah, that's interesting. Thank you for that perspective. Ashley, you were one of 8 U.S. athletes competing in the 2016 Olympics as an open member of the LGBTQ plus community. So in your opinion, what steps are or should be taken by the paddling community to make your sport a safe space for other members of the LGBTQ community?
Sure, yeah. In slalom racing, there's quite a bit of recognition about it and discussion. But in the whitewater, in my experience, there really hasn't been that much of a discussion at all. There's nobody out on the river that just comes up to me and talks to me about it. It's not a super spoken about thing. And I think that's the first thing to do, is have conversations about it. And I'm having a women's clinic once a month, so I'm trying to help support women's paddling and make a safe space to have a community grow there. And I think that's a good route for LGBTQ communities. I think visibility and always does a lot, especially if I work a lot with kids, so that's really important, is just to norm it and hopefully go on from there.
Yeah, great. I mean, the segues you guys are providing me are great tonight, so thank you very much, because my next question is actually about teaching. And that is something that both of you have mentioned in this conversation. But both of you teach paddling as well as compete, as well as advocate, as well as all the other things you do in the paddling sport. So Ashley, Ashley, you teach at the Dickerson Whitewater course here, is that right? And on the Potomac?
Yeah, on the Potomac River. Actually, Dickerson Whitewater course just closed permanently this year. So
oh no.
Yeah, my home course is gone.
And then Risa, you have taught critically injured veterans and done paddling outreach in that way. Is that
right? I would call it more outreach than teaching. I got my certification, but I haven't taught many classes. But yeah, I've been a volunteer for Team River Runner here. So I taught a lot of people how to roll and how to get comfortable on the water. And You
Well, and
trip.
that's what I want to know is for the people tonight who are not avid paddlers, what's the one piece of advice that you can offer someone who's just getting started on the water? What's the best piece of advice?
My best piece of advice is don't expect to go straight. Whitewater kayaks are not designed to just go straight. People struggle with it, and then they kind of get turned off from it. But no, on a more serious note, I think go with people you enjoy and have a good experience.
Great. Yeah, Risa, what advice do you have people just getting started?
I would say the same thing, and I would say take a class, find a group that, and some of the schools will provide like, I know a lot of people who have become like a group with their first class, their beginner class, maybe not a day or a weekend, but like I say, a day or a weekend, then a week-long class or something like that. That becomes your people
Mhm.
because you've gone through this incredibly steep learning curve together, and and share that important experience. And I would almost say for sure go with either a club like the CCA, just because they adopt you like a child, one of the family, or a school like Kaleva, because they'll, you're hiring them as teachers, but you also become part of an unbelievable family too. And
Mhm.
that's as important as the skills you have, just listening to Ashley. She has lifelong friends from having gone to camp. Um, that's so powerful.
Yeah. Just a quick plug for now next summer. But we found that at our happy hour paddle events, there's a lot of first time paddlers, people who've never been on the water before. So we do show people kind of how to use the paddle and how to be safe. We show them basic paddle techniques, but we try and make it so that it's inexpensive, it's easy to get out, and there's a big group. We have between 100 to 175 people per event out at Keybridge Boathouse. We take over. Um, and it's pretty cheap to join. So we try and just say, just go out and try it. And if you like it, there's tons of different ways to get better at it, and you can join groups and things like that. But the first step is just getting in the water. That's what we try and tell people. Um, Risa, what kind of life lessons has paddling taught you, or how has paddling affected your life off the water?
Um, I have amazing friends, people who have saved my life, literally, like there are a few. I really wouldn't be sitting here breathing without them. But even, short of that, people, a lot of the folks who I've mentioned who got on long trips, um, and have gone through like really difficult times, whether it's on the trip, like scary trip or accident, or being with someone during a time of transition in their life. So I have people who would like fly here tomorrow if I really asked them to, and I would do the same. And there's something about the dynamic of, that we've been talking about, the life experiences that you have, and it's not just, paddling difficult water or something like that. Um, but if you paddle for a while and develop these trips and you have your little posse, I think most people who have paddled for a little while have a small group of people who they call their buddies, the go-to
Mm-hmm.
friends. And I think they would, like, this is in the whole world. I think they would all say that those friends would do that for them.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what so it's a combination of events, and I think kindred spirits. You make friends with people who you like and are like you a little bit. Um, but that's what it's, friendships,
Yeah.
amazing friendships.
Support, like a great support network, and kind of being there for each other. I think you both mentioned, finding the people that will watch your back and you'll watch theirs. Ashley, what about you? What has paddling taught you, or how does it affect your life off the water?
Yeah, so I couldn't agree with Risa more. I think she said it perfectly. So the other thing for me is that I started kayaking when I was 10. And by the time I was 14, I started teaching. They had a counselor in training program. So you just kind of work your way up and you start teaching the younger kids. And that investment in my future has turned into my entire career.
Mhm.
And beyond racing, my true passion is teaching. I love teaching kids so much, and adults too, for sure. But it's really about trying to connect with that person. It's not about what skill you're trying to teach them or anything like that. It's about truly connecting. And a lot of the time you deal with fear. And it's not fear of a big scary thing. It's just fear of uncomfort, or if they don't know what to do next, or going upside down underwater for the first time. And getting to connect with different people and trying to help them through that is just always such a different challenge. And I've just become really passionate about it. So I've been teaching for 16 years now. And I would have stopped racing if I did not teach kids. Like that, when they surf their first wave, or anyone, when they surf their first wave or learn their draw stroke for the first time, get their roll, it just gives me that energy that has taken me from 10 to 31 now, you know, so
Yeah,
I couldn't be more grateful.
wonderful. We're going to turn it over to the audience in just a second here. I've got a couple more questions for you guys before we do that. So audience members, get your burning questions ready. But Risa, you've held leadership positions with a lot of different organizations, from sustainability projects to manage and restore our rivers, but also a lot of advocacy work as well. So why has advocacy work been a big part of your career?
No, I started kayaking, as a lot of people do, because it's a fun thing. It's fun to be outside. It's exciting. You learn skills. And after you're on a few rivers or a few trips, even if it's on the same river, even if it's like your third trip down the Potomac, you see something that looks like garbage, or you see some evidence of neglect. You know, you could be out in the middle of what you think is wilderness, and then you see a pipe coming into the river that's raw sewage. So it doesn't take long before you realize that rivers are how they're used and how they might be neglected, and that no one's watching, that somebody's letting that pipe come into the river. You know, how did that happen? So you have to be almost kind of blind if you start paddling a lot and not see that. So people choose to act on it differently. You know, so I think there are like 700 river conservation groups in the country. I mean, there are many, 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 many of them, because people experience that, whether it's from hiking or from kayaking or canoeing. But advocacy is needed. The rivers need for, we want the Potomac so that we can drink out of it. Melissa, maybe you mentioned that Montgomery County water is Potomac River water. We need it. And how much we do to protect it is really, really up to us. For me, where I kind of, it wasn't so much just cleaning up water, but when I started paddling, the idea of being able to affect the license of a hydropower company. There were many that were coming up for, well, I don't know if we have time for this, but in the 70s, the Federal Power Act was was changed a little bit, and there's a kayaker in D.C. who he was the head of all the lawyers in the House of Congress. They wrote all the bills, the Legislative Counsel's office, and he slipped in this phrase that was agreed upon, and literally nobody understood how powerful it was going to be. And it was that in the license for a Federal Energy Regulatory Commission licensed dam, the water needed to acknowledge non-power uses. And that's all he put in there. But that means that you can hold up a licensing of a big monster dam because fish are going to die, or because it's going to affect frog laying season, egg laying season, or because the area between where the dam is and where the power is downstream is, the river's dry. So there are thousands of miles in the country where the river is dry. So not only can fish not be there, but people can't kayak or canoe. So the whole idea of relicensing dams so that water could be restored to the river became a possibility in the 80s. So there were
Because of a kayaker.
Because of a kayaker. Yes, a Harvard lawyer, smart kayaker,
But a kayaker.
but a kayaker who helped draft legislation.
Wow.
And his name is Pope Bowen. He lives in DC and Capitol Hill still. So all these projects came up, and so like a bunch of pieces of American Whitewater Volunteers, we got a list of the 1,000 dams that there are roughly, and about 300 that are probably ones that are drying up rivers that would be with some gradient and not dangerous, that would be good for recreation. So we made a list of ones that were coming up to be relicensed, and I hiked a few and checked out a few that we thought this would be fun if there was water in it, and then worked on those projects. So you know, that's my contribution, more than trying to improve water quality. It was helping the movement, if you will, or the process of getting involved in hydropower licensing. So I worked on the Chioa and a couple of rivers down the Tallulah, a bunch of in the south. I was living in the south at the time, but so it was partly because, like, how could these utility owners keep the water off for themselves? That doesn't seem right. They didn't make it. They didn't create the water. How could they, like, hoard it? And then also thinking about all the paddling possibilities, because now in the Southeast, and in New York State, there's a whole season of paddling because of these releases. It used to just be after the summertime. After now, everything's dried up. There was no paddling until the Gully started in West Virginia.
I think it's interesting too to think about advocacy can take place because you want a place to recreate, but those kind of protections for rivers can also really greatly positively impact water quality as well. So, you know, fish populations and keeping those ecosystems balanced is good for paddlers, it's good for the environment, it's good for our drinking water. So you can approach advocacy from a bunch of different angles and have some really great outcomes for our river. I do want to give the audience a chance, but Ashley, I had one last question for you before I turn it over. What's next for paddling on the Potomac? What do you see coming up? What do you want to tell us about paddling on the Potomac?
Sure. Well, I mean, I hope paddling on the Potomac stays how it is, but no. For me personally, I'm really excited. I'm now partnering with Potomac Paddle Sports, and we are building intermediate and advanced programs on top of what they have. And my most exciting thing is we're going to build a junior Olympic program. So
great.
Yeah, and I've been a part of a couple of them now, but this one's going to be my own, and I can't wait to get kids in boats. That's what I like to do, and it's not about becoming a slalom paddler. It's just a way to practice and get in your kayak every day and have a good time and build that crew of people that you can grow up with.
Yeah, I think both of you mentioned in different contexts, you know, learning to be uncomfortable. And this sounds like, and how important that is for growth and change, and whether it's addressing systemic racism or it's addressing access to rivers or how to paddle for the first time and not be afraid. That leaning into discomfort is a really important part of that. And if that's something you can start sharing with kids at an early age, like, what a great lifelong lesson. Okay, so if you would like to ask a question to Risa or Ashley, please use the raise your hand feature. And a snoring dog is totally fine for the background. So Christine, if you want to come up on screen, you're welcome to, but I can also ask your question for you. And Melissa, who's with us today from Team Potomac, will call on you if you have your hand raised and would like to ask a question. So while you all are getting ready to do that, I'll ask Christina's question for you. For an adult beginner, what's a good kayak to start with? That's a really good question, by the way.
That's a really good question. I put a lot of clients in Dagger Mambas and Dagger Nomads. Also, there's Liquid Logic Remixes, basically a high volume creeker. It's kind of like a tank. You can kind of learn anything. It's a really good boat to start rolling in. And then it's one that you'll keep in your fleet as you become a kayaker with a larger and larger fleet of boats.
That's right. Risa, do you have any recommendations?
No, I think Ashley knows the current boats. If you're not sure, if you forget the names of them, like the model names, a creek boat is you know, it's kind of more cigar shaped, so it is rounder and easier to roll. And there are some that, like the Liquid Logic boat is, I don't know if you'd call it river runner boat, but if you go to the store and a store, or you're asking someone who's selling one, those two categories, if they mention a model name that is not familiar to you.
Yeah. Melissa, do we have any other questions? Don't be shy, guys.
I don't see any hands raised yet. I have a question.
Yes, please. Everyone, this is Melissa. She is our Senior Director of Communications and joining us tonight from Clarksburg. So hi, Melissa. Nice
Hi.
shirt, by the way.
Representing Team Potomac. Thanks. Thanks, everyone. It's good to be here. Thanks, Risa and Ashley. I've really enjoyed listening to you tonight. I have so many questions. I have a silly one, though. As somebody who's a novice paddler myself, what's your preferred method to get into your boat? I kind of usually like scooch in and do this like weird shimmy. Like, are there any tips or tricks for like how to like lessen the awkwardness and get into your boat without looking too silly?
For me and my slalom boat, man, I have to look even sillier because I can't be on the land. I have to be all the way in the water, away from everybody. You know, it's ridiculous. But no, I don't think there's really a cool way to do it. I don't think anybody's trying to look cool at that moment. Everybody's just trying to get in their boats too.
So not cool, but guarantee won't fall in is you put your paddle behind you, and you hold onto the cockpit and the paddle together, and then you lean the blade on shore. So you're rock solid. You're not moving ever. So you can do that if the water's moving fast even. It's called a paddle bridge, right, Ashley? So you grab your cockpit and the neck of the paddle, and you can sit on it. You can put all your weight on it, and you won't go anywhere, and the boat won't leave you.
It's a great tip. Ashley, we have another question for you. How many canoes and kayaks do you have? You mentioned a fleet, and we see a lot of paddles behind you.
Yeah. I used to be able to keep count until my friends started storing their boats at my house. Now it's all over. I don't know. Not enough, though. Not enough. A couple more.
You need more than two hands? Is that what you're telling us?
Oh, yeah.
A question for both of you. What's your favorite rapid to run on the Potomac? That's from Maggie.
Cool. For me, my favorite rapid, that's a tricky one because I haven't paddled the whole Potomac yet. That's a goal of mine.
That's gotta be next, Ashley.
Yeah, well, I've tried making it from Fletcher's Boathouse to the mouth of the Chesapeake in 24 hours, but I didn't know much about tides, and it turns out I think that's impossible. Yeah, so it was like 110 miles, and 67 miles later in 23 hours, I didn't make it, no. So I think Rocky Island Surfing Wave at about 4.1, 4.3, that kind of range is my total favorite place on earth.
Nice. Risa, do you have a favorite?
I do. You're gonna laugh though because I'm a fan of squirt boating. There's
tell us what that is.
That's like a whole discussion on itself. But squirt boats are kayaks, and they're really trim in size, so the volume, and they're fiberglass like Ashley's boats, but they're cut so that you are actually not floating. So when I'm in my squirt boat, my waist is at the water and my boat is underwater. And the intent is you use the lack of volume to actually do stuff underwater. So a main thing that you can do is like where there's an eddy line, like an eddy, and then the current coming through. Where they get together is the eddy line. It's sort of, if you look at an eddy line, it's sort of swirly because there actually are like swirls, like little vortexes that are created by the still water and the moving water. So you can tap into that, and these boats that are kind of flat. They almost look like a surfboard. They, like Bernoulli's principle, you can tap into that vortex like like a wing of a plane and go underwater.
Great.
So the goal is to actually, and you can't like get stuck underwater. So that goal is to go down there, and about 5 feet below the surface of the water, it's completely calm. Even in
Wow.
the big Potomac, maybe in the Mather Gorge, it's a little deeper. So you can get to calm water and then come up when you want. So there are probably 8 or 9 places on the Potomac from Great Falls down to Carter Rock that are good at different levels, where it's calm, you know, it's not dangerous, and you can tap into one of these little vortexy eddy lines. And my favorite one, it's by Offutt Island. It's on the Virginia side of Offutt Island, and we call it Podunk, and it's perfect at 3 feet. And what's funny is that if you were paddling by and someone was doing like one of these underwater things, you'd see like 4 or 5 people staring at flat water, waiting for them to come up. So it seems a little odd, but it's I grew up when I was really little dancing, and ballet was my favorite thing. And going underwater and controlling your boat underwater, it's very slow, it's controlled, and it's very ballet-like to me. If you look up Mystery Move, which is the move, and you look up some videos, there's some fascinating videos of people who are much better than me doing that. But Podunk at 3 feet, that's my favorite place.
All right. Kelly actually wrote to us and said, definitely Google squirt floating videos. And I was just thinking, as soon as you said that, I could hear kind of out in the distance, like furious Googling, what is that? Kelly had another question for you guys too. She asked, aside from community and people, what's your favorite thing about the Potomac River?
I think my favorite thing about the Potomac is the fact that you can attain up the most popular section of river, which I didn't know was like a weird thing that Potomac River people do.
Tell us what that is.
Yeah, so attaining is when you actually start below the rapids and go up them. Yeah.
Like a salmon.
Yeah, like a salmon, but you can use eddies, which are actually traveling upstream. And it's highly technical and really fun. But the Potomac is particularly inclined to be able to attain up it. It's really, it's a special river. And I, growing up here, did not know that most rivers you cannot just attain. And so when I was like, hey guys, let's go attaining, and they're like, what? I'm like, no, like, but it really hones your skills. And it's a cool way to get to know the river, because since you're paddling up, you're not getting into a rapid that you're not sure about because you see it from below.
That's really cool. Risa, what's your favorite part about the Potomac?
There are so many access points. You know, there are so many places where you can get in, and so many options that you have. Like attaining is awesome because there are places where it is easy to put in, and like paddling up from, say, like Anglers Inn, you go until you can't go anymore, and then you float down. Like, how easy is that? You know, if you can attain 100 yards and come back, or you can attain, you know, almost up to Great Falls and come back. And you just have plenty of options. When the canal's got water in it, there are even more options, because you literally can paddle up the canal, come down the river. We have fewer, but you can walk up the canal and come down, or you could shuttle like to C&O Canal National Park. I mean, yeah, up at the tavern up there. So we just have many options for every level of skill and experience. You can go to Thompson's Boathouse if you've never kayaked before and hop in a river and see the Watergate and the Kennedy Center, and then upstream it looks like wilderness. You know, we just have so many options. I think that's one of the reasons why there are so many kayakers here.
Yeah, one of my favorite descriptions of the Potomac is one of the wildest urban rivers, and it's just so easy to get to spots where you have these iconic skylines, and then minutes later, you just feel like you're in the middle of the wilderness. And so I feel very lucky to have grown up here and now to work here. We are at 9 o'clock now, so I can't believe we have gotten through a whole hour. I have so many more questions. I didn't even get to ask you both what your biggest paddling fails were. That was high on my list. I see Ashley's like, I've got some stories.
I'll show you.
Oh, Ashley's going to show us. So before we sign off, Risa, do you have a biggest paddling fail you want to share with our audiences? Oh,
let's see that. What's the story, Ashley?
This is my first boat. This is the last time I swam. Yeah, that's all I have left.
Oh my gosh. Mine are too numerous to mention, I think.
Too numerous to mention. It's a fair answer. I want to thank you both so much for joining us tonight. This has been great. I really love talking to you. I hope that in the future, when we can gather again, we could meet somewhere and have an actual happy hour. We do both as well. So let's keep that in mind. We owe you guys a local beverage. So we'll keep that in mind for next time. But thank you both so much for joining us today. This has been a great conversation. I just want to tell everyone who's joined us that Risa mentioned that sometimes when she's out, she sees litter. We do have ways now for you all to help us address some of that litter. We have responsible fall cleanup events coming up. So please stay tuned. We'll have them in September, October, and November with our volunteer team leaders. And we're really excited to get to meet with you guys back out on the water again. So stay tuned for those. That we'll be releasing signups for that very soon. Thank you both again so much for joining us tonight. This has been great, and we hope to talk to you again really soon.
Thank you, Katie. Thank you, Melissa. See you, Ashley.
Yeah, it's good to see you, Risa.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you all for the work you do.
Yeah.
I really appreciate it.
Actually, we'll be in touch. I need to get you out for happy hour paddles too.
That would be awesome. Cool.
All right, guys, have a great night, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye.